More Than Just a Pretty Face, Chapter 18. A few days later, I was staring into Bisma's brown eyes, which she quickly cast down. Danielle, We've been standing here for a while. We have? Bisma nodded. And? Maybe you should let me in? Oh, sorry. I stepped back, and she walked into Zar's apartment, nervously tucking a strand of her hair that escaped her high ponytail behind her ear. Uncle Inayat was on yet another business trip aboard, and Zar had agreed to be exiled, so we had the place to ourselves. Sarab, of course, had been kept in the dark. If he knew Bisma and I were alone together outside a public space, I don't know what he'd say, but it definitely involved the suggestion that I grovel before Allah to ask forgiveness. Well, anyway, I realize that freezing at the very beginning of a date isn't the smoothest move in the world, but in my defense, there's nothing sexier than a shalwar kameez that fits a woman just right. All the fashion designers in the world can come at me if they want. Bisma was wearing a plain sunshine yellow kameez over a white shalwar. She hadn't bothered with a dupatta, and it was simple and classy and flirty and all at the same time. It looked like it had been custom stitched for her, which it probably had. Even so, I don't think it would have stopped my world from spinning if anyone else had worn it. I was just so used to seeing her in a superhero tee and beat-up jeans that it caught me completely off guard. I like her outfit. She ducked her head in that awkward, embarrassed way of accepting compliments. Then she looked around. Inyat's uncle's post-separation home was nice enough, but it was really bare. There was a TV and console, a leather couch, and a wicker patio table on which he and Zar ate dinner. There's no pictures or paintings on the walls, no embellishments of any kind. It's nice. Hopefully, I said as I made my way back to the kitchen, the food is better than the decor. I'm sure it will be great, Bisma said. You're early, though. Sorry. It's totally fine. I picked up a chef's knife and gestured at the ingredients I was still working with. You want to sit down? She shook her head. With arms crossed behind her back, she peered over the counter. I'd rather just watch you. Hey, what happened to your finger? I waved off her concern and turned my attention to the onion I'd been chopping when she knocked. It's nothing. Need help? I chuckled. Thanks, but this is my library. That doesn't make any sense. Yeah, it sounded cooler in my head. The kitchen is my happy place, is what I meant. I started dicing an onion. I wasn't as fast as usual because of my finger, but Bisma still seemed impressed. I had to slow down even more when she drifted into the kitchen and stood next to me, and her arm grazed mine. Chef Broder's warning about focus was fresh in my mind, as with a sting from my cut on my finger. Do you like to cook? Bisma shook her head. No, I do it when I have to, like an obedient Desi girl and all that. It just isn't fun for me. Really? I think it's awesome. She laughed. I know. The first thing I remember ever is the time we were at a fancy restaurant. Must have been some special occasion for my parents or something, and this man walked up to the table with a plate of food, and whoosh, there was a ball of fire, and everybody started cheering. That's a great first memory. I looked over at her. What's yours? She wrinkled at her nose. Having to throw away one of Suri's really stinky diapers? Gross. Yeah, Bisma said. Speaking of Soraya, I'm starting to worry she has a crush on you or something. She talks about you all the time. You've made quite an impression. Happens to everybody, I said. Even I got a crush on me. There's that confidence again. Bisma laughed. So everybody, huh? She turned away and studied the video game stickers Zar had on his fridge. Her voice was quiet when she asked, Do you think I have a crush on you too? The knife in my hand stopped for a moment. Then I pressed, Well, if you don't, you will once you had my food. Ah, so all this is an elaborate ruse. Yep, I'm going to seduce you with my grandmother's kati dal and keema. Bisma, who'd been tracing the N7 logo for Mass Effect, and with a delicate touch spun around. Wait, seriously? You invited me over for dal and keema? I got why she was surprised. It was a staple food in Pakistani households all over the world. It wasn't for special occasions. It was like going to someone's house and being served chicken soup or spaghetti. Hopefully she wasn't too disappointed. I can make something else if you want. No, it's cool. I was just, you were expecting something fancier. It isn't too late I can make something like that for you. I decided to listen to Brodier's advice and go on with something simple because I figured out why she told me to do things this way. I just think that if you're going to cook for a friend, you shouldn't make something that you make for a stranger. It should be personal. Bisma smiled, and she stepped away from me a little, putting some distance between us. Makes sense. We both went quiet for a while. Leaning against the wall farthest from me, she started examining her fingernails as if she discovered something really interesting about them. By the way, Suri was asking what happened with the prospect of yours, the one you're asking advice about. That isn't going to work out. Bisma looked up. You finally realized she isn't good for you, did you? Told you I was slow. I thought you meant with school and stuff. No, I'm generally an idiot. She tapped her fingers against the wall, and she was leaning on. Tapped the wall she was leaning on. I wish you'd stop saying that. You're not an idiot. You're not slow. You just got other interests. That's actually really great. How many brown doctors or lawyers or engineers does the world need anyway? You know, I said, using the edge of my blue blade to pile diced green chilies into a bowl and held my onions. We never talked about what you want to do. I mean, I know you're studying microbiology, but what comes next? A master's, maybe? I picked microbiology because it's kind of like the study of how really small things can have really big consequences. I know that sounds like I picked it because of what happened in Portland with the tape, and maybe that's a little true, but it's actually awesome. What fascinating about microorganisms? I'd always thought that nothing was fascinating about microorganisms. Actually, that's not true. I hadn't really ever thought about them at all. Bisma, on the other hand, had a lot to say about the life around us that we couldn't see. I listened to her speak, ignoring for once the sizzle of the ground beef on the stove, searing, turning a rich brown with the smell of cumin. Garlic threatened to overwhelm the cherry blossoms and pears of her perfume. I moved a little closer to keep them at bay. Soon I was done with my keema, and I set rice to boil. The kati dal I'd already made last night, according to Czar, would have been impossible to keep away from entirely, had turned out almost perfectly, though he thought it wasn't sour enough. I could have gone with more tamarind pulp, I guess, but when it comes to food, I opt for subtlety. So far, I had followed Brodier's advice and things were going well. There was, however, a second part to what she said I should do. That made me kind of nervous. You're super quiet all of a sudden. Me? No? Really? No, I'm good. Fine. Great, in fact. Bismarck raised her eyebrows. I think there's something I need to ask you. Go ahead. Took a deep breath and said something I'd never say to anyone. Do you want to dance? Bisma stared at me like I've done completely unexpected, which I suppose I had. What had Chef Brodier said? You will never regret asking the girl to dance? That was a lie. I just realized about a millisecond too late. Obviously, you're totally going to regret asking the girl to dance if she says no, and you made everything super awkward. What? Bisma finally asked. I'm supposed to ask you to dance.